What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
Beginning in the middle of the last century, many socialist manufacturers began to come to the conclusion that the most rational layout for light commercial vehicles is a wagon, because it allows you to accommodate and transport the maximum number of passengers or cargo within a given body length. We can remember barkers from GDR, Polish Zuk, as well as Soviet UAZs RAFs. In short, by the early 70s the countries of the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance, CMEA, had enough serial buses with the prefix micro. Czech brand Škoda had commercial versions on the base of station wagons 1201 and 1202 in the form of vans and pickup trucks at the junction of 50/60s, but their capabilities for cargo transportation were limited, and in passenger versions these cars could carry no more than 5 people, including the driver. First of all, the socialist state needed such vehicles, because for many enterprises a real truck or bus was too large, and it was inexpedient to drive such vehicles for the sake of transporting several passengers or less than a ton of cargo. It was theoretically possible to buy such transport abroad, but it would require foreign currency. Therefore, the state formulated its technical task, which sounded approximately as follows: creation of a lightweight multifunctional, spacious vehicle for commercial purposes, suitable for transportation of both passengers and cargo. The old platform with archaic backbone frame was no longer suitable for such a vehicle, so the car was decided to create according to the then fashionable scheme, all-metal load-bearing body of wagon layout. In order to speed up the process and reduce the cost of launching a fundamentally new model, it was decided to unify it with the existing models as much as possible. Work on the minibus began in 1956, and in September the first 3 prototypes were ready with the factory designation 979, which received a 1.2-litre engine with an output of 36 horsepower, mounted in front of the front axle. The second series was built in March 1957. It was much more spacious and perfect externally, and the only prototype of the third series was created in July of the same year. The engine was located above the front axle, which improved the behavior of the car. The next prototype appeared in March 1958, and it almost had the usual features of a production model. Since the driving tests of the previous prototypes showed that the 36 horsepower unit was obviously weak for a rather large and spacious minibus, the car was decided to be equipped with a more powerful 52 horsepower motor, which was developed for the military vehicle Škoda 973. In addition, the prototype was equipped with a torsion bar rear suspension from Tatra 805. The final appearance of the car was formed in 1961 to 1962, that is, Czechoslovakia was not lagging behind neither the USSR with its Rafik and UAZ, nor the Jedus with their barkers. Interestingly, at the same time work was underway to create a light utilitarian vehicles for use in agriculture, which also used units and assemblies of the model 1203. However, the design of the body was radically different, because it was an extremely simplified platform with canvas top, and if necessary, the doors and windshield frame could be easily dismantled, and the body sides could be folded down for easy loading and unloading. It turned out to be a simple field transporter for transporting crops. The prototype of the delivery truck was called Škoda 998 Agromobile, and it was planned to produce at the factory Česká Republic, CZ, which is known in our country by motorcycles Šezet. A little more than a dozen prototypes were created, but it never made it to mass production. Photo: Škoda storyboard. A long road in the pre-conveyor Junso. By 1962, the concept and appearance of the car finally formed and was approved in the form of a minibus, ambulance, and a car with a truck platform under the general designation Škoda 1203. However, the car was put into serial production only in 1968. That is, such a multi-purpose vehicle needed by the country missed almost all the 60s. Why was it so? In order to start production of a fundamentally new model, it was necessary to significantly redesign the factory space, as well as to re-equip the conveyor, to purchase and set up new body dies, to reconfigure a lot of equipment. And for this purpose, first of all, funds were needed. We should not forget that Škoda at that time was actively renewing its passenger car lineup, and the preference for financing was given, of course, to it. rather than to a fundamentally new form factor model for the plant. Moreover, within the CMEA at that time it was possible to cover the needs of state enterprises by purchasing Polish and East German minibuses. And yet at the end of 1968, after all the production difficulties and troubles, the first serial copy of the Minibus 1203 finally came off the factory assembly line in the Czech town of Versatility. Thus, from the moment of the beginning of work on the new car has passed 12 years, a lot even by our standards, because so long before the assembly line we had only 41st Moskvich and Tavria, which is also explained by the priorities in financing Avtovaz compared to other Soviet car plants. The appearance of Škoda by this time was not too outdated, because it did not have any sharp fashion solutions. And despite the touching Lupo-Glazuru face with large round headlights, the car looked very fast for a minibus, because the short hood received a fairly strong slope, and the rear part was not vertical, as in many vans, and also had a noticeable positive angle, which was emphasized by the shape of the taillights. Therefore, the 1203 was not inferior in design neither to our Rafik of the first generation, nor to Polish-German classmates. The 1.2-litre engine was unified with the current Škoda cars and was noticeably more powerful, 64 horsepower, which allowed the car with curb weight of 1,170 kilograms to accelerate up to 95 kilometers per hour and carry 8 passengers or 1 ton of cargo. The first production was launched the most popular 2-seat delivery van, where the driver and passenger were separated from the cargo compartment by a metal partition. Then the production of 8-seat minibuses began, and in time there were such modifications as 5-seat cargo passenger version, delivery truck with flatbed, ambulance, and even a car for ritual services, refrigerator, version for police, fire department, and veterinary service. In a word, when put on the assembly line, the Model 1203 really performed the role of multi-purpose transport, which, although it did not shine dynamics or refine driving characteristics, but at the same time quite successfully solved the tasks assigned to it by state enterprises and even special services. However, the designers were well aware that the time passed on the way to the assembly line was not in vain, because by the end of the 60s, the car has already begun to slowly become obsolete. Therefore, at the beginning of the next decade, the factory began to work on modernization of the Model 1203, which resulted in the prototype of Škoda 778 van, created in 1972, which differed more actual appearance, better visibility, and more powerful 1.5-litre petrol engine. Alas, like many other Škoda prototypes of those years, it never became a production model. In order for the country to get more cars at the limited production capacity of the plant in Versatility, since 1973, 1,203-inch began to be produced at the car plant TAZ in the Slovakian city of Trnava, not to be confused with the bus plant of the same name from the Yugoslavian Zagreb. And since in the early 80s Škoda was actively updating its passenger car lineup, since 1981, the production of the 1203 model was transferred to the TAZ plant completely. Thus, for 13 years, the plant in Versatility produced 69,727 copies of the only serial minibus of Škoda brand. After the CSSR ceased to exist, having split into the independent states of Czech Republic and Slovakia, the 1203 cars continued to be produced in Trnava, but only under the TAZ brand. At the same time, they received a 5-speed, but the 1.4-litre engine still constructively went back to the forebears, created in the pre-war period. Finally, the 1203 family became the property of history in 1999. And it means that minibus theme was actual for Škoda brand more than 40 years, that is practically the whole second half of XX century. Well, and in the current century Czechs within the Volkswagen concern have never expressed any intentions to create any new minibus. For a simple reason, this topic has long and firmly closed on itself Volkswagen. However, in 2021 Škoda designer Daniel Hayek, within the framework of the project Icons Get a Makeover, published his vision of how the successor 1203 could look like, if it was destined to be produced in our time. In conclusion, the Czech Rafik stands as a remarkable testament to Škoda's ingenuity and commitment to innovation in the automotive industry. Over the span of more than 40 years, this unique minibus not only adapted to the changing needs of its users but also became a beloved symbol of practicality and reliability. Its enduring legacy reflects Škoda's ability to blend functionality with design, making the Rafik a cherished part of Czech transportation history. As we look back on its impressive journey, we can appreciate how this iconic vehicle has left an indelible mark on both the roads and the hearts of those who experienced its charm.